Oh my goodness, we're live!
Where we're going to talk a little bit about how different technologies, laws, and sort of policies or ways of managing mainstream social media platforms are really going to impact free speech.
I think that we're going to have a great conversation about what free speech means, what it doesn't mean, how it impacts our work on the interwebs, so to speak.
Just like there are things like confidentiality and there are limits to that, there are free speech and there are some limits to that.
But actually the Bill of Rights are things that we're protected from the government, right? So it's not that the government protects it, it's that we're protected from the government.
Like when we talk about free speech, about players taking a knee at NFL games and that being really controversial, and is that free speech?
A lot of people really have misconstrued free speech to say that I can say whatever I want at any time without consequences. That is not at all what the Free Speech Amendment is about.
Suicide, self-harm, threats towards others, offensive hate speech, violent hate speech, and suicide sort of gets lumped in with those topics.
Facebook is tracking you even if you don't have a Facebook account.
Oh, free speech is not the same as fair speech. It's not the same as safe speech.
This happens on college campuses. Students that are seen at the counseling center for suicide risk are told that they cannot tell anybody else about their suicide thoughts or their suicide experience.
And Facebook has a lot of control over what is moderated and what is shared.
But on this giant scale, and this aggregate scale, it becomes very valuable to these companies to provide better advertising to you.
If you are posting about feeling suicidal and the way that you post it gets it either bumped to the top of everybody's queues or gets it eliminated and hidden from people's queues, that's a really big deal, right?
But what if somebody were to have an issue with the Suicide Watch subreddit, or say something really bad potentially happened inside that community and Reddit's PR had to address it?
And it impacts the ability to speak about suicide.
We've got this huge suicide prevention movement about safe messaging that in many ways has the exact opposite effect.
Suicide social media being lumped in with cyberbullying social media, as if those are the same kind of thing.
If we push them off these places, and Reddit certainly can, they're going to go somewhere else, and we have no idea what they're up to. Is that better?
This really will impact the ability to broadcast messages and to connect with people.
April has this amazing saying that the solution to pollution is dilution, and it makes sense.
We're driving out a certain amount of conversation about suicide, and we're lumping probably a lot of conversations about suicide under one umbrella, just like we do with sex.
Safe messaging guidelines are not an evidence-based practice. There isn't a shred of evidence that if you follow safe messaging guidelines that there will be less suicides in your community. There's no good evidence that if you don't, that suicides will go up.
Suicidality is anything that's stigmatized is, people are going to still want to talk about it.
I guarantee you that we could look at porn, if we could look at people that are commenting on porn threads and connect that to other bits of media about them and figure out who's at risk of suicide based on the information they're putting out on wherever they're putting it out. And that may be an amazing place to intervene and connect with people.
Speaking of the porn industry, I like to think about fluid dynamics.
So there's a lot of things you can detect from any communications that people happen to be having online.
The more wide open it is, there's going to be a lot less pressure, but also a lot of things are going to get through that you would not prefer. If you filter, funnel, constrain things, it's harder to get a message through, and there are going to be all sorts of hiccups, irregularity. There's going to be more opportunity for prejudice and discrimination, maybe more opportunity to control things that you would find objectionable.
When it comes to creating and maintaining relationships on a digital platform, number one, don't be a dick. Number two, post with intention, post with purpose.
How does somebody's communication on Pornhub, receiving support when reporting their suicidality on Pornhub, how does that impact their wellness?
More and more of our lives are lived in a digital way. We're going to have to come to terms with what that means, and we're going to adjust and find new knowledge that helps us navigate that and be healthier in that framework, because the framework isn't going to go away. It's only going to get more intense, I promise.